the last thing we left off was we completed, we talked about the difference between authorization and authentication. Right? Part 1 was simply the authentication. Right? Are you who you say you are? And the only way we verify that is we don't actually like check your driver's license at the door. We have to have some sort of like secret password between us that only you should know about, right? Unless you're like using someone else's like HBO or Netflix password, right? Which none of us do, obviously. So we left with some sort of like sign up, and that was kind of working. I'm just gonna create a user. We're gonna see the logs, see how it's saved in the database, and that the password is not a plain text password, right? Because we all agree that that's like the wrong answer. And then we will actually implement like this login. Cool. So does anyone have like a username? Yep. Any particular password? Great. So good. If I hit create user, let's take a look at these logs. Yeah. Now I'm gonna do this. When I create user, notice, hey, cool, right? That's for me. All right, so yeah, yeah. I'll explain that here in a second. So I started the post to users, right? I just submitted the form. All it did is it began the transaction and it committed. Notice, right? The username is yup, and the password comes out filtered. Doesn't actually show up, but when you actually see it in here, when it's committed inside the SQLite database, username is yup, password digest comes out as this unreadable hash. So our data is secure. Cool? That's everything that we did yesterday in terms of like rewriting the setter method for password and then updating that self.password digest to be that bcrypt password.
That filter part, is that because you use password?
No, it's because I use has secure password. It just like recognizes that this is like a password and it should not be coming up. Cool? It says 1, 2, 3, 4 if you must know. But yeah, that's why. Cool? Awesome. So if we were to take a look at that schema, what I did was I added like this avatar and I put like a default URL. This is just a picture of Guy Fieri. All right. As you obviously have seen, right? So this is the new user sign up, right? Just like a form 4 with a username and password. We built this last time. Cool? Just like bring you up to speed since it's normally like a morning and afternoon thing, but I didn't want to like bog you down with like a 3.5 hour lecture. So, we cool from yesterday? Awesome. So now what we want to do is we want this like login page, right? So it makes sense that the user and the user's controller user model would have this user's new, right? This new.erb. What if we wanted to do the login? What do we talk about in terms of like what logging in actually is in regards to whether or not it saves to the database and kind of what information do we need, right? Is this something that's passed just one time? Is it passed between request to request to request? What is like this login feature and this functionality? Absolutely, except it doesn't store like, oh yeah, the instance ID, yeah, you're right, totally right, cool. So we talked about this yesterday, right? That because I'm not saving the fact that I'm logged in into the database, do I need a model for this? Right? Do I need a model? Right? Think about it. The model just talks to the database. So if I'm not saving anything to the database, I don't actually need the model. So would I do RailsG resource for my session? No, because that would build the model for me. It would also create some sort of migration for me. So then it would give me access to like this sessions database, which I do not need. Therefore, this would be a perfect example of why RailsG model or RailsG controller will separate that, right? So given that I don't need to save this information to the database, I do not need to put it inside a model. I simply need a controller. I did this already, and you've seen it yesterday because I needed to be able to like explain a little bit of that logic. We had that sessions controller, if you remember. Okay. That was weird. Okay. Doesn't like my shortcuts. Either way. And then I talked about like in this session controller, we would have some sort of like create a session, right? Well, first we're going to do is in login form, we're going to actually find the user, but we can't find it by the ID because the user logs in with the username and the password. So we have to find the user by the username, right? So user.find by username. That just like reads in like amazing English actually. And then we need to actually remember that authenticate method that we built, and it checks the plain text password against the bcrypt password object using the bcrypt comparator. And that should return, if true, the user object, otherwise return false. All right? That's what the authenticate did. And so from here, naturally, the first thing we want to do is actually build like the login form so we can see this full circle. Right? This is just the create. This is just like the post half. This is just that logic. So how can we build this new form? Right? What would we build and where would we build it? Well, just like in the user's new, that allows this sign up form, this get request to new. User's new gives you the form. In the session, very much the same. We can just do new, right? And in here, do we need to talk to the model? Do we need to do anything inside this sessions new? Well, it seems a little bit nebulous right now, right? It's kind of like, do we need anything? I'm not really sure. So let's build it out in the view first, just to kind of see what happens. So where would I want to build this new? In the sessions controller new, probably want inside my sessions view, right? A new. This is going to be my login form. Cool. This form is going to post to /login, right? How can I actually build this form? Do I have an object for this login? I'm going to log someone in. Do I have an object, and do I need an object? What is this form ultimately going to be doing? That is correct. Well, let's like think about this, right? Because what I'm trying to do here is teach you to figure out like, hey, when I'm confronted with a new problem, I can't go and sit in a lecture at my job and like hear the solution, right? It's kind of like, let's think these things through. And that is the difference between form for and form tag, because we know we need a form, right? Cat's out the bag. Do I want to have a form for the user? Because that's going to take the username and the password, and it's going to submit to where by default. Yes, it will make a post, and it will submit to the user's controller, nesting inside a user's param, like key of user, right? Is that what we really want? We want actually instead to hit the sessions controller and the sessions action of create. So because that, right, I probably want to just create a form where I can control where it goes, and all I need is like the params from that form. So I don't actually need this user object in my form. This should not be like a form for a user. Process of elimination, I'll have a form tag, right? Boop, boop, boop. Where is this path that it's going to go? All right. What is this submission path here? And where would I go to kind of like determine that? Rake routes is simply going to give me the routes that exist. All right. I need to figure out what route this is going to hit. Huge hint here. Let's take a look at routes. Well, the first thing is, just like when I'm trying to create a new user, just like when I'm trying to create a new nacho or a hamburger, whatever it is, the first thing I need is actually to be able to get the form, right? What HTTP verb will simply get me the form? Class is so smart, right? And do we want this, right? Do you guys want to be lazy and do something like resources and do something like session? If we do something like that, right, our routes become sessions, right? Sessions new, right? Sessions ID, right? Is that what you want your users to go to in the URL? Or would you rather them go to something called myawesomewebsite/login to log in, right? So this get should be /login. Cool, all right? Remember, this is just like what you want that experience to be. Now that you have the ability to build it, what is it that you want to see? And understand that you have the tools to build it, right? This is going to go to what controller action? Sessions, specifically going to the new, because I'm just getting that form, right? Here we will, okay, all right, sorry. Here we will go to this helper, all right? And what do we want to call this? Right, just login. Like this will be ultimately the login path if I use this helper. Great. That's just going to give me the form. That's going to render this, right? As we know what Rails will do. Now, we talked about that form. Where do you want that form to go? Well, we know the form always is either going to be a post or patch, right? Am I editing something right now, or am I kind of creating a new session for this user? I'm going to be creating a new session for a user. So would that be the post or the patch? It's like you're writing this code by yourself, right? And naturally, I want to go to what controller? And hit what specific action? Great. Do I need like a helper for this create? Well, one, I don't need it. And two, even if I did, what would I build? Well, let's think about it. Remember, the helper simply gives you the URL, right? /login/login. It's already built. It's up to the form, it's up to the link to, it's up to the button to tell me whether or not it's a get or a post. So my helper is already built because I have the get to /login. So I would not build a helper here. Are there any questions on that? Awesome. Now that I have my route set up, right, I know that I can now change this bad boy to login path. Because of what I just explained here, that the login path is going to give me that /login, all right? And the thing that determines this difference is this method here. I can remove method post because a form by default will post. But just to be explicit, to kind of walk the dog here, I'm going to make it a method post. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Good job. Cool. Awesome. So again, this class is just simply to style it. So I'm going to remove this for sake of readability for the code on one page. And we are not doing search right now. We are, however, doing what? What text field tag do I want for this? The username, all right? And let me just, while I'm at it, just good practice, quick label tag for the username. And then a quick label tag for the money. Cool. Am I done? Trust me, it will happen to you. It happens to me a lot, right? And we can just name this like login, right? Login, please. Please. With a Z, because we're cool, right? Huh? it just bulletizes them. So it just makes them bullets. I use text field tag here because I'm actually going to show you what I'm typing, right? But yes, please use the password field tag in your application. Cool? Good clarification. Yeah, but just for the demonstration purposes, when I'm typing it, I don't want to like have to keep telling you my password. I might accidentally slip and tell you my password's like I love Flatiron. Like, oops, I don't know. Don't steal my credit card information. Cool. So, any questions on this, right? Let's just see it in action. Let's see it actually work. That was a lot of code. Probably should have tested right when I wrote the get, and that's what you should do. But I'm just trying to like walk the whole scenario through, right? So let's do it. I would go, hey, my God, that picture is so good. Where would I go to hit this? Would I go to /sessions? All right, because that's exactly what I specified in the URL. And there it is. Cool. I'm going to hit this sessions create here, right? And like I normally always do, I just drop like a buy bug. That's what I normally do. Do you want me to do that? Or do you want to just kind of talk through what this method will do? The choice is yours. You want to buy bug it? All right. The reason I'm like prompting you for this is because as you start to build new features, the first thing you should do is, can I hit the route? So many times in Mod 5, students would be like, help, help, this is not working. I'm like, okay, are you hitting the route you want to hit? What do you mean? I'm like, when you post your form, you submit your request, is it hitting the controller action you want? I'm not sure. I'm like, okay. More than half the time, you're not hitting the correct controller action. And that's why it's not doing what you think it's doing, right? So this is just good practice. Can I hit the controller action? Am I following through? So now, let's do it. Username, all right? Man, too many of this. Let's just put dolphin, all right? That's sweet. I don't know, Florida? Is that like a normal thing? Sweet. Login, please. Great. I'm hanging here. I can see it. And it makes sense. I should be hanging. Am I in the correct controller, though? Yeah, and I am. I could tell because I made all these like nonsense comments last time, right? So the first thing I want to find the user, right? By user find by. Cool. What will happen because I put in a username of dolphin? What will actually happen? Remember, find and find by return different things. I went over this like last week. Find will throw the error. It will say, hey, active record can't find this, no record exists. But find by will simply go nil. Let's walk this. If this is nil, what is at user? What kind of error can I expect to see on line 13? Undefined method, authenticate for nil class. Can you see this happening already? Right? So when you run into an error like that and you're like, oh snap, it's not working. Just like, whoa, pump the brakes there, Turbo. It's not working because it shouldn't be working, right? This is expected behavior, and that's okay. So how can we possibly get around that? Well, let's think. What I really want to do is, this is just some simple logic here, right? Something like if the, at user exists, right? Then do this, otherwise, like else, right? Code terms. Like do something else, right? So like if the user exists, like go ahead and log them in, right? Otherwise, like, hey, send them right back to the login page, right? Like, hey, you did not successfully log in, something like that, right? So something I want to show you is there's a sweet line of code. Instead of doing this if, right, and then like wrapping it, the whole thing, you can do this sexy one-liner and do something like if the user and user.authenticate, then do this, else redirects to the user's path. The order of this is really important because Ruby, very much like me, is super lazy. And I'll show you. All right? Cool. So, do you guys remember like how that and or operator works. Yes, G.
Yes, so look for the first thing to see if it exists first. If not, then it'll run the copy to pipe equals.
Absolutely, right? So it will evaluate left to right. It will read the left side. If that evaluates to true, then it will read the right side and check to see if that evaluates to true. So if I do something like true and true, it obviously will be true. If I do something like true and false, it will read the left side and be like true, true dat, and then it will read the right side and be like, oh, false. The whole statement is now false, right? Now, if I were to do something like true, right, and, what happens if I just tell it a variable I've never defined, right? Like my boy Alan Turing. That's not a string. It's referring to like a variable or a method. Does that exist right now? No. What error should I expect? There it is. Spot on, right? Here's the interesting thing. If I were to do something like false and Alan Turing, what should I expect to see? I should see false. Ruby's super lazy. It's going to read the left side and be like, okay, is this true? Nope, not. And it won't even bother reading the right side because it knows that the whole thing has to be true. So if I know the first part is false, I can assume with 100% accuracy that the whole statement is false. All right? It's like a little bit of math logic 101. Cool? Taking this, running it into our code, if the user exists, it will then check to authenticate. If the first item is nil, which evaluates to false, it will not even bother reading this second part. Cool? Ruby hacks, right? It's like this is like a fundamental understanding of how the language works and why you can write better code because you understand how the language works. Cool? Awesome. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I should probably log in with like something that works though, right? Like Dolphin doesn't exist. Cool. I'm just gonna run C. It's gonna definitely error because authenticate, as you can see, undefined method, right, from earlier. Now let's go right back to login. No, don't want that form submission. What was that user we just made? Yeah. What was the password? 1234? All right, very good. See, this is why I wanted to show. Embarrassing. Cool. Hit login, right? I should see this actually run. So now @user actually exists, right? Can I do @user.authenticate with the params of password? It gave me something, right? It gave me that object back. Exactly what I think the authenticate method does because we built it together and then we commented it out and put has secure password. Do you remember? I can actually check to see if this is working because I can tell it, what if I authenticated with something like not a good password, right? It will kick back false. All right, so I can prove that this is working and it's not just like letting everyone through. So let's finish this logic, right? If the user and user.authenticate, what should I do? First, I want to like let the user know something happened, right? This is kind of like part of the user experience. I can use flash because I don't want that message to say, hey, you logged in successfully every single page. I don't want this to persist like everywhere, right? Just that one extra request. This is something like, it's not really an error, could be a message, but here I'm going to use something called notice. All right? And it's simply going to be, yay, you logged in. Cool? It's like the bad English like bothering people. I teach this like all the time, so this is for me. Cool? All right. Yeah, I logged in. Yeah. Now, cookies and sessions, right? How do we get something to persist from request to request? Just like we have random access, right? We have like global access to this like flash hash. We also have global access to session hash. we can simply do what? The key of like a user ID, because remember the session goes inside the cookie, and that's simply key value pairs, right? But specifically, I said, it's very important, it only accepts strings. So I shouldn't be passing in, like, I should not be, and I cannot pass in something like the user object. It doesn't like that. I can, however, pass in an ID, right? That's just a number. That's just like a string of like 7 or something, right? User ID 7. I'm setting that session ID to be that user. I can always do user.findBy later and grab the user object, but I just need to make sure I'm tracking that user through every request. Cool? Same with like Flavortown and the nachos. After I do this, what should happen? Sure, I can redirect right to the user. But I want to make sure I catch this if statement, right? What should happen if they fail to authenticate? What do you want to happen? Well, I want to let the user know something, right? I want to let the user know what time it is. And that is, do I want to tell them specifically if the username or password is incorrect, or do I want to be vague and generic? Right? So like, sorry, the username, or, I'm talking computer language, right? Just kidding. Is wrong. You can be more professional in your app, right? I'm just a clown, so don't use my app, yeah? I'm a jerk. You try logging in, it's like, nice try, dog. Not today, right? That's why I'm a teacher, I'm not a developer. Cool, so now that the user knows something, what should happen now? I can just redirect to what path? Login path. So smart. Cool, right? Sorry. This is all the notes here, right? Are there any questions on like this session being created and like how this route worked and what login does for us? Cool. So let's actually log in now, right? Just to see what's going on. Boop, boop, boop. I'm actually going to hit continue. Right? Cool. Everything looks like it's totally fine, but I want to make sure. Let's go to login path one more time. Type in yup, 1, 2, 3, 4. I hit login. I continue. And there I am. I was successfully redirected to my show page. That must mean, based on the logic we just wrote, that I'm officially logged in. I have all these cool things, like I can see my username. I can even see my profile picture. And I could see something called delete profile, right? Like my delete button. Like let's say I want to like wipe myself from Instagram or Bookface, I can do that. But interestingly enough, if I understand RESTful routing, I can go to users 9 and see that there was a username by the name of Squirrel, right? We made this person like in the last class, do you remember? Also, mirror image of me, strikingly handsome. But funny enough, even though I'm logged in as user 10, I can still see this logged in, like this delete button on user 9. Is that what we want? Should we allow anyone in the airport just because they've been authenticated to get on any plane? No, we want this like authorization piece to like actually kick in, right? So what are some of the things that we need to know in order to kind of block this, right? Like, hey, you're user 10, just because you're on user's 9 page, you shouldn't be able to do all the things that user 9 can do. It'd be crazy if someone logged in to their Instagram and started posting pictures to your account. It'd be crazy, right?
You should already have user 9's instance variable, right? Because you're getting data from, you're using data from visualization display that avatar.
Okay.
So you can do session user ID is equal, if it's not equal to
Yeah, right? Exactly. The direction he's going is somewhere on the show page, right? Right at that delete button, I should do something like, hey, does the session user ID double equal, right, the params ID, which is like the user that I'm actually pulling. If it's true, then show the delete button. If not, then hide it, right? Like sneak it away. Right? That makes sense to me. What we can do actually is, what we need really, let's think about it, is we need to know who the actual user is, right? Like who is currently logged in right now. And that way I can just kind of figure out, based on who's logged in, what part of my website has access to what. So let's think about where I would want to write that logic. What part of my application, either a model, a view, or a controller, right, would have access to every other controller? That's me having a stroke, yeah. Okay, would that be a good place to figure out who's currently logged in? Because who's currently logged in should determine whether or not they're authorized in any part of my application. Would that make a sense to you? All right, great. So inside, be surprised how much prep work goes in these lectures. In my application controller, there happens to be some very important notes. All right. First thing is, can you see this? So who's the current logger? Who's currently loggered in right now? Who's currently logged in, right? So we can do that and simply do def, right, current user. That makes sense, right? That's just like a great name, current user. And what would this determine? What would I write inside current user?
If there is a session. So like if there is a session.
Right.
Or the session that we created was session user ID.
Yes.
So if there is that,
Uh-huh.
then we then can move on to the next level, which is that user ID that
It's tricky. It's tricky.
equals that current session or that session.
Mm-hmm. I like where your head's at because you're like 2 steps ahead. Simply in this method, how can we determine who the current user is? Well, let's think about this, right? I have a session with the user ID that's stored in it, number 9. Would that be the current user? Right? Can I find this current user with the session and a key of user ID? Would that return to me the user object of the person that I know is logged in? Yeah, right? So how can I determine if I am logged in? Right? So I have the current user, but I need to know, are you actually logged in? Right? This is kind of like checking to see if there's anything happening inside the session ID. Right?
Logged in question?
What do you mean? Question mark? What does the question mark mean in like Ruby specifically? So there's a couple things, right? The Ruby language and the way that it's styled and designed is if I end a method in a question mark, all right, what does that sound like to you? Like a yes, right? Like a yes or no question, right? I should return some sort of Boolean. So the thing about being logged in is there has to be something about a current user. If there's nothing about a current user, I can assume then that nobody's logged in, right? But it's weird though. Current user is an object. So if I do this, I will return the object. But if it's not there, I will return false. That makes sense, right? Is there a way I can take an object and force it into a Boolean? Well, let's check. I can simply go open the IRB and see, if something is true, I can return true. If something is not true, what would that be? If something is not true, it will be. In the same way that I can have some cool word, right? And if I return it, it would just be some cool word. If I put not cool word, what should I get? Interesting. Can I check to see if something is not something cool? By simply throwing the double bang, I can coerce anything I want into a Boolean. Do you see how that works? Because if I not it, right, it will always return a Boolean. But if I not it, it will return whether or not that original value was truthy. Does that make sense? There's a lot to wrap your head around. So I'm just giving like 2 seconds, right? Like something exists and not that, then it has to be false. But then I can always opposite the not and get the original truthy value. Are there any questions? In the same way that I can then do current user, I want to simply return a Boolean, right? Because we agreed that logged in is some sort of question. Should return a Boolean. Not current user. See how I got there? This is like, again, a solid understanding of the Ruby language and how to manipulate it to give you what it is that you want and build the features that you want. Right? Because we all agreed, right? I need to know who the current user is and whether or not someone's like even logged in. And this is how I built it. Cool. Now, the last thing is, right? Are we authorized to actually see something, right? Should I be able to see somebody else's like details? Should I see somebody else's like logged in information? Well, we have a question about whether or not someone's authorized. I should probably name that method authorized. Oop, just kidding. Not necessarily like a Boolean, but this is more like if you're authorized, go ahead and allow access. But if you're not authorized, I'm gonna redirect you, right? Because that's like the good experience, right? Like if I go to users 9 and I'm logged into users 10, it should be like, whoa, dog, not authorized. Some sort of flash notice that said you're not allowed to see this page. Sorry, it's pay to play. Give me $10 and maybe I'll let you know what's up. But until then, redirect to a different page. Does that make sense? Right, that would be the experience, right? Like I should not be able to log into Instagram and then like click on your account, especially if it's private, and then to be immediately allowed to see anything or access anything. It's like, hey, it's like a redirect. Or maybe I render something different, like a private screen, and there's a lock on there, and it's like, nope, not today. Cool? I know you guys broke up 6 years ago. Please cut it out, right? No? All right, anyways. So, if you are not, right, what would I put in? Something like, maybe like if you're not logged in, then what? What would this look like? Right. Do you want to do the login path? Why no? Sometimes I just ask this question just because you need to know what you want, right? And then if that's what you want, then let's do it. If you're not logged in, where would you want to go? If you're not logged in, you can't really see a show page. The what? Some generic landing page, right? Just like Ruby, I'm very lazy, right? So I like this like suggestion of like go right to the login path, right? Hey, if you're not logged in, yo, you need to log in. I'm not about trying to make a separate landing page for you. Just be like, hey, you're not logged in. Cool. I'm just gonna be like, you're not logged in, dog. Just go ahead and log right in. You can in fact do that, right? This is exactly where you and I or any other architect, any other app designer will start to differentiate. And that's what makes your app yours. These are the choices that make your app different. Me, I'm lazy. If you're not logged in, you're going right to the login page, dog. Sorry. But here, exactly what you want, right? Maybe you do have like a public index view, right? Point them right to the public index view. Make sure the route's there, right? Hitting the right controller. And then that would be your app. Are there any questions as to why I decided to go and redirect to login? It's because I'm lazy, right? And that page already exists. What are your questions?
My question is just conceptually, like we already dealt with authentication, already done with authorization.
Mm-hmm.
The person could be logged in, but they're trying to access the page that's not active before.
100%.
You know, so
Absolutely, right? So now what we can do is we can build a different method, right? And check to see if they're authorized access for this particular resource, right? Do you need me to walk you through that? Or do you feel like at this point you can kind of determine maybe with information like current user, right? You can write a custom method that can see whether or not something is authorized, and then maybe before that action, you can check to see if they're authorized on your custom method. Do you need me to walk you through that?
no.
I mean, I can, right? The whole point is like, again, I'm just trying to give you the tools so you can start stringing together things, right? Like before action, you already know. It gets called before the controller action actually executes, right? And we're gonna use a lot of that right now. And then your custom method will do what you want it to do.
I was just trying to visualize the authorized method. So like one utilization for it is if you decide to like type in the address like user/3 or 4 or whatever to see some specific show page, it can, before you're able to look at it, see if you're logged in, and then if not, take you back to login.
Yes, and I will, and we're actually gonna go over that real quick, right? So what we always wanna do is make sure we let the user know something, right? So if they're not logged in, then what? Must be logged in, right? Again, my laziness is kicking. Just for you, all right, to view this page. Cool. Man, I'm leaving early for the day. I'm at my limit. I'm just kidding. So, who has seen like if not, right? Does that sound like good English to you? Right? So, if not is essentially the equivalent to unless. So, unless you're logged in, right, redirect to login page. That is actually more readable than if you're not logged in, redirect to the login page. Both mean the same thing, but one just has a more clear tone to it, right? So anytime you see an if not, think to yourself, can I use unless? And is that more readable? Yeah? Unless will do the same exact logic as if not. Cool. It's, we're hitting the 44-minute mark, and usually this is when I start to lose focus, right? Do you want a break? I would love one. Great, let's take a break. We just finished the authorized method, right? And it will bounce you back if you are not logged in. Where would I actually want to use this to block anything and everything within my application? What controller or model or view would have access to my entire application that I can now lock down everything, right? Lucky for us, we're already there. Cool? So my before action, is this not it? No, this is it, right? I'm gonna call authorized. Yeah? Let's see what actually happens within my app. If I were to go to users, say 7, and the server's down, that would also work. This page isn't working. Localhost has redirected you too many times. What do you think that means? That's a weird error, right? Kind of hard to figure out because the error is not maybe that great. It says, redirected you too many times. Well, I know that it's definitely happening because of a redirect. Luckily for us, we have the Rails logs. Let's find out what happened. I will answer it as vaguely as your question. Yes. Done. Lecture's over. Congratulations. Yeah. No, the reason is I'm trying to flesh out these questions, right? Like, I love where your head's at, and that is exactly what you should be thinking. Like, oh, I'm stuck in some sort of loop. But what kind of loop? And more important than that is, do I have some semblance of an idea of where to track it down? Because the biggest problem is, it's like I run into an error. Even if I understand it, where do I look? How do I fix it? It's kind of like the question that you should be trying to answer, right? Well, if I put authorize in my application controller, right, based on the magic of inheritance, every single controller that inherits from it will also call before action authorized, right? And as you remember, before action will call authorize, and authorize will say, hey, unless you're logged in, redirect to the login path. The problem is, when I did my get to user 7, it hit the application controller, it called the before action authorize and said redirect to login. And then boom, that makes sense. I did a get to /login. It's exactly what I want to do. The problem is I'm redirected to login because I'm still not logged in. So I've run into this hilarious problem where unless I'm logged in, I go to login. But even when I'm at login, I need to be logged in to view login. And you're like, that's not good. So how can I possibly skip this before action of authorized on my login page? Well, where is my login page? Is it here? It's in the what controller? So here I would probably want to, wouldn't it be nice if there was something called skip before action? That would be pretty money, right? Authorized. Do I want it for every single thing inside my controller? Currently, yes, because I only have 2 methods. But just because I need it for everything right now doesn't mean I necessarily need it in the future. So what I want to do is call that only. I only want it on the new and on the create. In the event I make more of these methods, I have to make a conscious choice as to whether or not I want it skipped before the action. Because session becomes really tricky. Right? Like if someone has access to the ability to create sessions within my account or my application, they can kind of do whatever they want, right? So I want to make sure I lock these down, the one that's actually going to create the session, right? I allow this to happen, but I lock down everything else, and I want to make the choice to do so. Cool? So let's find out if that will work. Can I at least see login money? Right? And I want to make sure I don't block the create either, because that's what actually creates the session, right? So if I just blocked new, it would still run me into this loop. Did you have a question? That's all going to be logic, and that will be logic that is handled inside the view. So the question is, let's say there are certain features like a delete button that's on every single page. How can I make sure that only the person that's logged in can only delete their own account, right? So let's do that. Oh, no, it's cool. I just wanted to make sure I answered any questions. So the question is, like, how can I make sure only the delete when I'm logged in works? Well, let's do this. Let's actually log in and try to figure it out. Ready? What's a good login? Yep, right. And 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a terrible account. I think I have a buy bug, yeah? Yeah, I never got rid of the buy bug. Embarrassing. Let's get rid of it. So if I hit continue. Right? Here's the weird thing. On my create, though, I was able to get redirected to the show page. My question to you is, does my session exist? Well, let's take a look. On my create for my, on my login, right? Oh, that was login, right? Oh man, I messed up. Let's do this instead. Users new, right? That's just from the flash message. Cool. Ready? I want to sign up as new guy fiery 1. Password, obviously. Flavor Town, right? That's what it says. I wish I put this as a text field. It would have been hilarious. Anyways, if I create user, what happens? I get redirected here. On my user's controller, inside my create, right, it redirects the user, as it should. Does my session exist here? No, it was never created. I'm actually still using the session from the logged in person before. So I never logged out, right? So we'll have to build the logout feature. We'll have to create this new session, overwrite the old session, all right, in this like form. So really what you want to do is like session here of, because remember, if I call this hash, it's simply going to overwrite it. Yeah? And now I make sure I have the correct user ID for this session when I on this create. Cool? So we talked about trying to have certain features work on certain pages, right? In my show page, right, because that's where it's going to be, I have this delete happening. I want to somehow figure out, I think I have to wrap this whole thing in a parentheses, but it's okay. What I really want to do is, in this, I want to do if the current user double equals at user.id, oops, idea, that's weird. I have to manually type these, embarrassing. Cool. Then simply render this. Cool. All I'm checking to see is if the current user, right, is equal to this particular user ID, then the button shows up, else nothing. That delete button shouldn't even exist if you are not the current user on that correct show page. Does that make sense? And that's really about it, right? That's kind of how you do it. Let's see if it works, right? Because remember what we're doing here. This is the view, all right? And this is the first time we've ever done this. I'm calling a method I built inside the controller into the view. So, undefined local variable method, current user. This view does not understand what the current user is, right? So how can I fix that? So has everyone gotten this far?
In the controller, you can set an instance variable for current user.
I built this thing called current user. If I want this method inside a view, I must do something called a helper method, current user. This gives the views access to specific methods that I've built inside the controller. And there it is. Ready? Who are we logged in as? 10? No? 9?
Well, we did the create.
Oh, we did the create before the session, right? Okay, you're right. Let's log in. Because now there's like no real session. Oops. Whatever. That's fine. Cool. Yup. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. What's happening here? Why is this delete button not working? I just logged in. Let's think. I have current user available, right? Inside my new. Where's the show page? If the current user matches user ID, then this button should exist.
Does this session, like, are we assigning the session hash at login? Because we just did it for create.
At login, the session ID should exist. That's why let's test it. Ready? What is the session or the key of user ID? It's 10.
This current user is running the user object, not
Oh, I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb. It just returned the object. It should be the current user's ID. Cool. Did you see how we figured that out? Man, that was embarrassing. I was like, that should work. All right, cool. So, cool. Good deal. Let's get rid of this by bug. Great sleuth work, team. So now, if I refresh, I should see this delete button come up, right? I should not see it for user 11. And that's really about that sort of like protecting information, certain views, because it won't even exist on the page based on logic that you want to provide. But all you really need to know at the end of the day is who's logged in, who the current user is, and whether or not somebody is logged in. Everything else will then be massive amounts of logic inside the view about like, hey, I want to show this, I only want to show this, I want to show this, or maybe certain admins have privileges to certain things, so you can check to see the current user's ID, or maybe you can make a method called isAdmin, and then like whitelist certain users that are admins, and then instead of current user, you can put like if admin.id double equals, something like that, and you can kind of like make your own custom logic. Is everyone kind of following along with that? Damian and then Jason.
Just a quick, with security type stuff, I might have this completely wrong, but if you're putting logic in the view page, isn't it better to call a method in the model so people can't see it? I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe we're just doing that for example.
No, this is fine, right? There needs to be some logic in the view page. There has to be, right? What you really want to avoid is having like all of your logic inside the view page, right? So for example, I'm not going to define what an admin is on the view page and then call admin. I would put that method inside the controller and then call admin inside the view, right? And that's what I mean by extracting some of that extra logic. Because if I define what an admin is inside the view, anyone that's on the view page can see who is an admin because it will be there in that logic, right? So very good question and good differentiator, right? Because that could be kind of tricky. Is that your question too, Jason?
No. So my question is, since you put the helper function in the application controller, that means all the view templates
Has access to current user.
If I just put it in, if we did a helper method in just sessions.
I would only have, yes.
So you skip the before action in the session controller, but in the user's controller, it doesn't do anything about it. Why is it that the authentication?
I was like logged in at the time, right? I never deleted the cookie. I was still logged in from the other person when I created that user, and that's why it like kind of passed that check.
So you
Right.
have to be logged in first for it to actually.
Yeah. So the last thing we want to do is add this like logout feature, all right? That would be nice. So let's do that. inside my like show page, so to speak, boop, 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 I want something, right? Probably also inside this delete, like some button 2, right? Log out. And what route should I hit? I should hit some route called logout, right? That would make sense to me. Because what I want you to get out of in this mindset that what route should I hit needs to already exist. Guess who has control of routes? Psst, you, right? I want to hit some sort of logout route. Too easy, right? And what controller action should I hit? Yes, that makes sense to me. And it should be destroy. Sure, we can name whatever you want, right? You can call it logout. Who cares, right? Yes. Right? Cool. I don't really use as logout, truth be told, mainly because you're only ever going to use logout like one time, right? In like where you're going to hold the logout. So to have a helper method for it, unless you plan on having logout buttons like all over your application, you're never going to use this helper. But in fact, you can build it and it will make your code that much more readable. And here's what I mean. In the show, now that we have the route, I can either do a button to, right, slash logout, or I can do the logout path, right? Like, is that more readable? Not really. Did I save any lines of code? It's actually like 3 or 4 more characters to write this. And if you want to count all the as characters inside the routes, you know. That being said though, you're 100% spot on. And if you wanted logout in more than one place, then yeah, logout path would totally be the right answer. That being said, right, I want to make sure that this method, because remember, button 2 is a sneaky form. And sneaky forms, just like regular forms, will automatically post. I want to make sure that this is a sure. It could be a delete, right? You know what? We want to do delete? Let's do delete. Cool. That makes me want to make sure I do this, right? For sure. Which one? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm missing this. Bloop. That looks okay. All right. Let's find out. Bloop. Oh, just kidding. I'm one of my user 10. Nice. Hey. Right? Will this work right now? Well, we have the view, right? The button, right? And we have the route. Do we have the controller action? Is it handling any actual information? What error should I see if I were to click logout?
Undefined method or just
The route exists, so I'm not going to get a routing error, but it's going to hit the sessions controller, look for a method called destroy, and then it's going to go into my sessions controller, and then it's going to look for a method called, and then it will tell me undefined method destroy within the sessions controller. Is that an error to you that you have absolutely no idea what to do with? Should be no at this point, right? Should be no at this point, right? Cool? All right. What should this do? Oh, sorry. Bloop, 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 bloop. Oh, also want to get rid of the bybug. Smart. What good indentation. Great sleuth work. I also spelled that wrong, which I very frequently do. All right. You'd be a good pair programmer. So, you are a good pair programmer. So, what happens here, right? Really all I'm trying to do is take that session, that key of user ID, oops, the key of user ID. And then I want to be like, nah, dog, you're done. Done, son. I can also get the key, call dot destroy on it. There's a lot of different ways, but really you just want to make sure that there's nothing inside this user ID, all right? Key of session. So what happens now? Just like I always like to do, quick redirect to the login path, all right? Because you just logged out, right? I'm just throwing you right back into login. I mean, I could throw you into another page that says, okay, thanks for playing, bye. Come again like tomorrow or something. I need users to make money. Please help me. All right, but here, just for the purposes of this app and this demo, I'm going to log out. It's going to blast my session, and then I'm going to have to log right back in. Cool. Oop. Refresh. Hit the log out. Uh-oh. Uninitialized constant sessions controller. It's because it's sessions controller. Embarrassing. Okay. Yo, didn't catch that one. You did? Sorry. Cool. And log out, and there we go. Go right back to the login page.
So is that only deleting the session?
That's simply deleting the session. That means nobody is logged in right now. Cool? Because log in, remember, is just tracking, if you remember the logic, from application. Is checking the current user, and the current user is only being tracked by the session. So if the session is gone, it's going to be like logged in, it's going to check current user is going to do a find by, and it will return nil. Nil will then return false in the logged in. So, all right, current user, right? It's going to call current user. It's going to do the find by. Session with the key of user ID will return nil. This whole thing will evaluate to nil. Current user will be nil. Bang, current user will be true. Bang, bang, current user will be false. Logged in will be false. Right? And that's like the whole thing. Are there any questions about logging in, current user, using sessions and cookies, and figuring out logic in the view to display certain things that you want to display based on who's logged in?
Maybe I'm not understanding what you told us. Is our sessions time constraint? Like you forget to hit the logout button and then X out of the browser, does that automatically end the session?
Absolutely not. That's why when I close my browser, I can open up github.com and be still logged in. The session has a default timeout, I think of like 2 weeks or something. You can specify exactly how long your session wants to be, and this is very crucial for security, especially because you don't want to be logged in longer than you need to be, right? Specific apps, like if you were like left your Bank of America or your Chase app like just open, and then like 30 seconds later it's like, hey, listen, you haven't done anything. I'm gonna log you out if you don't do anything next 5 seconds, right? So that expiration on that session is set to like 30 seconds, right? And remember, the session is inside the cookie and it gets passed back and forth every request. So if there was no new request on the page, then the session will automatically expire in 30 seconds. And you can set that. And I will send you out documentation on how to set the expiration of your cookie if you want, or that would be the exact thing I'm gonna Google. And then the first link that I see that's good, I'm gonna send it to you, which I will do anyway. But just so you're thinking, how would I figure this out in case there's no lecture? You know, that's like what I would do, right? Are there any questions about auth 1 and or 2? Great, that's all I have for you today. Oh, yeah, you're good, you're good. Yeah, we'll talk offline.